Thank you. We're entering the second part of this solving the unsolvable. I guess on the backstage you could see the contribution of your fellow panelists. So I will introduce this is more a tech session with the people who are running tech companies. I will introduce first Patrice. Patrice Caine is the chairman and CEO of Thales Group. Joined the group in 2002 in the strategy department. Worked before in the pharma industry. Worked also in the public sector with the French Minister of Finance. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Caillou is also a good friend. Founder of CEO of Horizon Robotics, a company dedicated to developing artificial intelligence processes and solutions for smart mobility and AIoT, if I'm correct. A lot of experience in machine learning and deep learning. And the company raised $600 million on the $3 billion something valuation in the beginning of the year. And you also were at Baidu and you got a lot of very strong awards, I think 3 times in a row, which is never seen before. We also have Frans van Houten, chairman and CEO of Royal Philips. You joined in 1986. You transformed this company into the global leader in health technology. You were named by Fortune magazine one of the world's top 20 business leaders in 2017, so you can help us to solve the unsolvable. And you also joined the board of Novartis in February 2017. So to get started, Patrice, what do you see as the technology that will really solve the unsolvable and as you look forward in your company?
Well, for this panel, I've chosen not to speak about AI for once, but to choose another very promising technology which is linked to quantum physics, what is called the second quantum revolution. We've heard a lot about quantum computing, but I'm not going to speak about this one, but more about quantum sensing, or how do we apply quantum physics to sensors and metrology. And this is really a forthcoming revolution. And typically in this domain, thanks to this quantum physics or quantum characteristics, we will be able to improve by multiple of, let's say, 100 to 1,000, which is huge in our industry, the precision of some sensors. Just one example to make it concrete. If you take a plane from, let's say, London to New York, if you lose the GPS system, then you rely on the inertial system, but this inertial system derives along the flight. And when you arrive in New York, the precision will be approximately between 1 to 10 kilometers. Okay, so most likely you will land somewhere else, not in JFK. With this new breed of inertial system, based on what we call cold atoms, the precision becomes 1 to 10 meters. So you see this, let's say, factor of precision that will be improved by 100 to 1,000. This is a real revolution. The second example is quantum communication. We know that cryptology or cryptology algorithm will be broken by quantum computers. So on the other hand, we work very hard on how to make communications secured against quantum computing. That we call quantum communication, and this is as well extremely promising, and it will be a revolution.
Thank you, Patrick. Can you, I think I know which technology you're going to talk about, but
of
tell
course.
us what you think about it.
Yes. Horizon Robotics is a 4-year-old startup with headquarters in Beijing. We are dedicated to developing the cutting-edge computing platform for cars. And by the way, we are probably the earliest startup worldwide working on innovations of AI chips on the edge. Why computing platforms for cars? If we look at over the last 40 years, so we have seen tremendous success of 2 computing platforms. The first one is PC computing, right? And then second one is mobile computing, right? We have seen huge successful companies like Microsoft, like Intel, like Apple, and you name it. Of course, people are keep asking, what is next one? And I believe the next computing platform is really the supercomputers running on wheels.
Okay, thank you. Frans, I think we're going to go to more healthcare, I guess. What do you see the most transformative technologies in your sector?
The world has an aging and growing population, right, which will have more lifestyle disease, and therefore society has a challenge to cope with the cost, but also the access to healthcare. Also here in the kingdom, that is a challenge. And so when we think about technology, we need a problem to solve, right? And at Philips, we have decided to focus all our innovation capacity on solving the world's challenges in creating access to healthcare and enhancing people's lives. When you go deep in analyzing that challenge, then you see that healthcare is way behind on the digitization. It is still largely an artisanal world where people work very hard as an individual to try to cope with disease in a reactive way. And so for me, the technology that will help change it is, of course, the digitization of the entire care system, right? Whether that is connecting consumers to healthcare providers in a new way, whether that is understanding the data of what is wrong with a patient and then coming to a precision diagnosis and the best treatment pathway for that patient, given their genomic makeup, their pathology, their longitudinal records, their history files, and that will move healthcare from generic to specific precision care for everybody individually. And of course, technologies like cloud, 5G, data science are all being leveraged as we speak. And we see major breakthroughs in productivity of care, fewer mistakes, less waste, but also in the effectiveness of care, better health outcomes. So it's a very exciting space that is somewhat conservative. And then it's great and refreshing to see how here in the kingdom, people are prepared to leapfrog to new systems, whereas in the Western world, people try to hold on to what they have because that's how they make their money, right? That's how surgeons will still do what they have been doing for 20 years. But I'm hopeful that the technology revolution that we are currently seeing is really transforming healthcare, and Philips is in the middle of it.
Thank you, Frans. I mean, next transition to Hongchen, people are conservative, so how do you interact, Caillou, in your space? How do you interact with large companies that may be conservative, and as you're transforming them, what's your interaction with them?
Right. So I think we have got to think really bold, think big, and act very nimble. So today, I think we are not in a timing of fully driverless, autonomous driving. But currently, I think the customers are really welcoming driver assistance and this infotainment systems, this human-computer interaction. So that's all mobile AI computing on cars. So we start from this low level, this ADAS type of driving assistance, and then gradually move up to 10 years later, fully autonomous. And currently, I think the computing demand is really requiring probably tens of teraops. I mean, one teraops means 1,000 billions of operations per second, but all the way to, in 10 years, to 5,000 tops. So we want to push the technology to all the way to, in 10 years, that's almost like the 5,000 tops, almost like a human brain computational capacity. But right now, we need to work together with the OEMs to address their current need, which is the driver monitor system, the infotainment system, this ADAS, right? And that's really create the business value, but also build the sustainable business model for a startup company.
Thank you, Caillou. I mean, you talk about processing power. Patrice, you talk about quantum computing. Maybe you can solve some of the problems of Caillou. How do you see the way you're handling the ecosystem at Thales with the startups and the rest?
If you want to innovate, to stay creative, definitely you need some kind of stimuli. And for sure, startups, or let's say smaller companies, are very important stimuli to us. We are used to work with startups. We are typically in Paris within Station F, quite a well-known incubator, at least in France, in the field of cybersecurity. We are at Sentai in Montreal, one of the most, I would say, hectic place in terms of AI. That's one thing. But it's not the only kind of stimulus that we are looking for. We are also looking for a stimulus coming from academics. It's very important in our case. So we have joint labs with some very prestigious academics. I could quote the CNRS in France, but I could quote as well MIT Media Lab in the US, where we run joint R&D programs with very well-known academic labs. And the third kind of stimulus for me, which is probably even more important, or at least as important as the two previous ones, is our customers. When we are able, it's not always possible, but when we are able to interact and to co-innovate, to look at the future with our customers, it's one of the greatest and most promising source of innovation and creativity.
Thank you, Patrice. Looking at you talk about the conservatism, talk about customers, we talk about ecosystem. How do you push this forward?
Well, I relate very much with what was just said about the co-creation with your customers. There are many bright scientists in academic hospitals who also have access to large sets of data. In fact, AI has made it possible to innovate also locally. So the threshold for innovation actually has gone down. So you see a fragmentation of the innovation landscape. For many of these startups, it's very difficult to scale up their innovations to a global presence. So for a company like Philips, it's great to work with many startups and together form an ecosystem of care innovation. We really need each other, and we can be symbiotic together.
Thank you. So as we're coming to the end of this second part of the panel, I'm going to ask you the same questions, closing remarks. How would you solve the unsolvable? A quote, conviction, even a question that the audience should remember. We start with you, Frans.
Well, we need to be bold with a North Star that's compelling, because that's the only way to mobilize people to move and then work together to get there. And I think then anything can be done.
Thank you. Caillou, Dr. Caillou?
I think even we are a small startup, we need to be mission and value driven. We set our mission to make human life safer and better. So safety is the #1 issue. And we need to build trust, together with our partners, our customers, and even the end users, because computing for driving is such a mission critical task. And we must put all our efforts and the value driven and safety first, human centric.
Thank you. Patrice, closing remarks? Well, a very simple statement. Quantum revolution is not anymore a dream. It's a reality. It's going to happen now in the short run, and it will really revolutionize all the industry, be it aeronautics, as I said, defense, healthcare, medicine, oil and gas, in many, many B2B sectors where we use sensors, when we use metrology, it will be a real revolution. Thank you, Patrice. I think we are coming to the end of this panel. We try to solve the unsolvable. I guess the panelists gave you insights, and I think we close with this. Thank you for participating, and thank you. Thank you very much.